Hey guys, Paul here. So in today's video, I wanted to talk about one of the new cards that's coming out in Darkwing Blast, as well as a broader conversation about what I consider to be a bit of an issue in Yu-Gi-Oh! Of Band-Aid fix cards. And what do I mean by that? All that, we're gonna get into it. So in Darkwing Blast, there's a new TCG exclusive card called Spellbound. I'll put it up on the screen, but it's a quick play spell that says all face-up monsters your opponent currently controls cannot be tributed or used as material for a fusion, synchro, exes, or link summon until the end of this turn. So, this card's interesting. A lot of people have very mixed opinions on it. Some people think that this is, incredible and super strong and it's like a power creeped dimensional barrier. Other people think like, meh, it's not that great, I'm not that impressed. I'm not exactly here to sort of give like a complete yes or no on it, although I will say that I have a feeling it will probably be at least moderately played and potentially very played if it sees even a little bit of competitive success. Typically, these like secret rare cards just end up being that way one way or another. So I don't know. I'm so mixed on this card because I think that it is another Band-Aid fix in Yu-Gi-Oh! And by Band-Aid fix, I mean that sometimes in the modern game of Yu-Gi-Oh, problems become very like prolific and everyone has to deal with them. And so Konami will answer the problem with a card that just completely like eradicates it and prevents it. But I don't really like that type of card design. I'm not saying it's altogether bad, but I kind of feel like it's a Band-Aid fix because it's not really solving the baseline issue. It's just giving you a super, sometimes overpowered answer to it. All right, let's go with some examples then. Here's a really big one, is Nibiru, right? Nibiru is a card that sort of punishes the opponent for playing, 5 or more monsters or summoning 5 or more monsters in one turn. And I think Nibiru is really strong and it certainly answers the problem that Yu-Gi-Oh's had of people can summon a load of monsters in one turn, right? If you're kind of an older player getting back into it or you're an outsider looking in, it's like, what? How did they summon like 50 million monsters in one turn? It just seems insane. So Nibiru was created as a way to sort of punish that and put a check on it. And I think that, to that degree, Nibiru has done a pretty good job. Obviously, some of the strongest decks sometimes still find ways to play around it, but generally speaking, Nibiru does that. The problem, of course, and I've talked about this a lot with Nibiru, is that it can really kind of crush casual level play a lot. So, against a meta deck, like I said, they can find a way around Nibiru, or maybe they can recover. But against, a mid-tier, low-tier deck, they get Nibiru, their turn's over, and they're out of resources, and it kind of sucks. Now, the sentiment I walk away with is just like, Nibiru was like a Band-Aid fix to the bigger problem that is decks can summon way too many monsters in Yu-Gi-Oh! Right now. And Nibiru answers it by just saying like, okay, if you summon more than this much, then you lose everything. And I don't really like these cards that just sort of like either take everything from your opponent or just completely prevent them from playing, locking them out somehow. Another really strong example of a sort of what I call a Band-Aid fixed card is Dark Ruler No More, which actually released around the same time as Nibiru. So Dark Ruler No More is this card where Konami recognized that unbreakable boards are really, really powerful and hard to deal with, and they make it where the person going second just simply might not be able to play any cards, and that sucks. The feeling of staring down, Barone and Borreload Savage and, whatever other negation monsters or just interrupts are on the field, and, you can't even play, say, like Raigeki to get rid of everything, and that card's at 3, because it will just get negated, or maybe the cards just can't be affected or whatever. So they created Dark Ruler No More, which is this card that just sort of says, okay, it negates all your opponent's monsters, and the icing on top is they can't respond to it. So, yay, right? Like your opponent's gonna make a big board, but you can use this to stop it. But the sort of sentiment that I think players have developed around these cards is that they're really kind of more annoying to combo players because it's like I, did all this stuff and then one single card can stop it. And I just don't know how much I really like that whole, that dynamic of cards that are kind of just these Band-Aid fixes to the fact that too many monsters have Omni negates and too many monsters are overprotected and can't be targeted and can't be destroyed and they'll to stop you from doing things. So Konami has to just create these stronger and stronger and stronger answers in order to, sort of put a Band-Aid on the problem. And, there's plenty of other sort of Band-Aid fix cards. I think that, hand traps were kind of a Band-Aid fix to monster effects. And then they kind of got the Band-Aid fix, I would say, of like, Call by the Grave and stuff like that. So, you can go on and on with that. But anyways, we're going to talk about Spellbound again, because I think that with a card like this, It is in some ways similar to Dimensional Barrier. It's got a few more uses. It can stop like, tribute summoning or just tributing in general. So it's a really good card against like say Fluandereeze or whatever. But I think more than that, it's just another card that kind of tells your opponent you can't do anything. And I don't like cards that just continue to tell the opponent that they simply cannot do anything. We already, people don't like Artifact Scythe, people don't like Mystic Mine, and people really hate Floodgates. Dimensional Barrier is already a contentious enough card, but there's plenty of things like Gozen, Rivalry, There Can Be Only One, just all these cards like that that kind of just stop your opponent in their tracks. And I don't like another card that just is saying the same thing. And the thing about playing Spellbound is that, yeah, I guess you could say there's like kind of a good time and a bad time to use it. So you can kind of get creative with that. But when I compare it to a card of yesteryear, something like, say, a Book of Moon or a Forbidden Lance or an Enemy Controller, that sort of card, I found those cards are far more interactive because, yes, Book of Moon can stop a Synchro Summon. It can stop a Synchro Summon because it could flip the monster down so it can't be used, or it could stop it from, Xyz summoning, Link summoning. But the fact of the matter is, with Book of Moon, is that, like, there's a little bit more dynamism to that decision. Whereas Spellbound is just kind of, it almost feels lazy, I guess, where your opponent is, you're just telling your opponent, like, you can't do anything with any of these monsters. You just have to stop, right? And I just don't like cards that kind of do that. And so it speaks to maybe a bigger issue in Yu-Gi-Oh! Right now, which is that Konami has created a game and that's so susceptible to power creep that we just have to make cards like this that leave no real, room to play around them, no real decision making involved. It just kind of feels like we're going to make a card that just says your opponent can't. They just can't do this. Like, they have to stop. And I don't know how I feel about that. I don't like it. I find it isn't like solving the problem. Like, to me, solving the problem would be, probably having to ban some cards that are like omni-negating generic extra deck boss monsters, but also making card design moving forward be less about the omni-negate and the huge boss and less about turning any warm bodies that end up on the field into, a Link monster, then comboing off from there. We've taken some steps in that direction. Halqifibrax finally being banned, I think, was, a good thing. It means that, like, fewer pile decks can just sort of churn out whatever else, and if they get stopped, they can just churn out the next thing, and then they get stopped, they can churn out the next thing. So, like, we're getting there, but there are still so many, like, cards like that exist that Konami kind of feels like they're backed into the corner of they have to create a card like Spellbound as a way to kind of to function as counterplay to it. But something that also ends up happening with a card like Spellbound, and Dimensional Barrier was kind of the same, sort of cut from the same cloth, is that if you go first and you're playing a combo deck or whatever, and you make, a board of several interruptions, negates, whatever, and then you set Spellbound, right? Then when your opponent tries to counter you in some way, you just chain this. And now, even if your opponent, say, used Dark Ruler No More on your field of negation monsters, if you had Spellbound, it still wouldn't matter because they wouldn't be able to play. But I think all this, like, you can't play, no, you can't play, no, you can't play, no, you can't play, it gets so tiring and exhausting, and just, I don't want to say that I hate this new card. I think it's, like, interesting, and I'm excited to see, I guess, what comes of it. I just don't like that there's so many cards now that just follow this same mantra of, like, here's what your opponent can't do. Here's just what they're not allowed to do. And that's the only way to stop the entire floodwater of, like, summons and plays and effects and negations is by just sort of saying, nope, you can't do anything. So it's not a matter of, like, picking a certain small thing to stop or a certain thing to interact with. We've gone beyond, like, even Ash Blossom or, like, Ghost Ogre being, like, the answer to things. A lot more decks now, it's just like, look, you main your 3 Dark Ruler No Mores, and I'm sure this card will become a side deck staple or something like that. And you just have to go with cards like Dimensional Shifter that just straight up say, like, yeah, everything's just banished for the turner. Drill and Lockbird's like, you just can't search anymore. I don't like that it has to be that way. I guess, call me whiny, call me Yugi Boomer or whatever, but I just prefer cards to not have to take such a shut-downy approach to things. So yeah, I guess to wrap it all up, I don't like that Yu-Gi-Oh! Relies so often on band-aid fix solutions to problems in a game that's just suffering so much from power creep. I really do think Konami would be better served just taming the actual combos. And at the same time, you can tame some of the floodgates. Tame everything a little bit more. Let's get fewer, omni-negating monsters, fewer super splashable extra deck monsters, and at the same time, let's get fewer floodgates. We could afford to have less like Rivalry of Warlord, less, Artifact Scythe, less all of that stuff. Like, I want the game to feel like people do get to like, there's a little bit of room to move and a little bit of room to breathe. So yeah, that's it. Let me know what you guys think. I mean, I think like Spellbound as a card is neat. I hope it doesn't become the next $100 staple secret rare spell that you have to have a playset of, but I really fear that it will. We'll see where it all goes. Share your thoughts in the comments. I'm very tired when I have to see more cards like this, but who knows? All right, see you guys in the next one. Best turn.